I discovered the autopsy of a baby that never existed, revealing 6 terrifying and haunted secrets. I never should have opened that door. My heart raced as I stepped into the dimly lit room. Shadows flickered along the walls, whispering secrets I was not meant to hear. The air was thick, cold like death itself. Felt wrong. I came home from work, tired, just another day at the office. The soft hum of the fridge was comforting. I plopped down on the couch, ready for a quiet evening. But the moment I heard the shuffling from down the hall, my pulse quickened. What could it be? It was late. Too late for anyone to be visiting. I tilted my head, straining to listen. A faint clattering echoed through the space. Was it the wind? No, this felt intentional. My instincts screamed at me, but curiosity tugged stronger. I crept down the hall, the wooden floorboards groaning beneath my weight. I shivered, the hairs on my arms standing tall. I reached for the handle, cold metal slick against my palm. The door loomed before me, an invitation to chaos. I should have turned back, but I couldn't resist. When I pushed the door open, a wave of damp air hit me. It reeked of decay. My stomach churned. What I found inside was beyond nightmarish. A table, stark and sterile, lay bare but for a small, grotesque figure. A baby, pale and lifeless, the skin almost translucent under the flickering light. Its eyes were closed, like it was merely sleeping, yet the silence screamed horror. I stumbled back, gasping, mind racing with questions. Why was it here? Who had done this? Every instinct told me to run, to get as far as I could from that scene. But darkness clung to me. I felt drawn into the room, an unseen force wrapping around me. Objects started to shift on the table. I swore I saw a tiny hand twitch. Then came a low, guttural sound. Was it crying? Instinct kicked in. I turned to flee. But a whisper rose within the shadows, calling my name. Come back. It beckoned, echoing in a chilling tone. I froze. Suddenly, a loud bang jolted me. The door slammed shut. Trapped, my breath quickened. I could see the outline of something in the corner, moving. A figure not human, almost spectral. What was happening? I didn't belong here. I wanted to scream, but no sound came. My chest tightened, heart hammering, as the figure stepped closer. Every shadow felt alive. Then, just as fear reached its peak, a swift darkness swallowed the light. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The darkness enveloped me, suffocating in its weight. I fought against my instinct to collapse, to curl into a tight ball of despair and terror. I needed to move, to escape this horrific tableau that had ensnared my existence. But as I turned, desperate hands clawing at the edges of reality, the figure emerged from the shadows, stealing what little light remained. It was a child, its features hauntingly familiar yet disturbingly twisted. Skin stretched tight over bones, eyes the shade of stagnant water, devoid of life yet brimming with an unsettling awareness. A mouth opened to release a sound that resonated deep within the core of my soul, a wrenching blend of laughter and crying that echoed against the damp walls. It should have shattered me, but instead, it pulled me in, like a moth drawn to an inexorable flame. Why did you come here? It asked, the voice slipping into my mind with the embrace of smoke. Why did you open the door? I couldn't answer. I was paralyzed in horror, every rational thought drowned by the rising tide of fear. In a frenzy, I grasped for the handle, but it refused to budge, a cruel reminder of my confinement. Join me, it whispered, tilting its head at an angle that was impossible for a living thing, as though its very bones defied the laws of nature. We want to play. From somewhere beneath the table came a rustle that morphed into a chorus of whispers. flickering like candle flames. I turned my gaze reluctantly back to the figure. For a fleeting instant, I saw other shapes coalesce around the table, each echoing the same hollow laughter. There, encircled by the remnants of nightmares past, sat an assemblage of otherworldly children, their limbs twisted and their eyes eternally vacant, yet all consumed with the same malevolent joy. A flickering glow emanated from the grotesque child's outstretched hand, illuminating a small, cracked locket that hung around its neck. "He keeps us," it declared, and suddenly I was struck with an overwhelming sensation of being observed off something vast and dark looming beyond the walls of this nightmare. Grinning visages turned toward me, all aware of my fear, of my helplessness. Panic surged anew, and with it an urgent determination. I was not going to let this be the end. I flung myself against the door, my heart slamming against my ribs, but it remained steadfast, unyielding, grinning in its refusal to let me escape. The laughter rose around me, filling the air thick with malice, and I could feel their hands. If they could touch me, if they could truly wrap themselves around Muhat, would they do? I screamed silently, yearning for help that would never come, for safety that lay beyond this cursed door. "Look," the figure said, and the other children turned to the farthest corner, where darkness wreathed a deeper shadow that twisted and beckoned as though it were alive. With horrified awe, I saw shapes twist and form within Eta Gargantuan, enveloping mass of shadow that undulated, murmuring secrets of unfathomable despair. It was hungry, desperate for something or someone. It surged closer, and in a moment of sheer instinct, I stumbled back against the table, clutching at the cold, damp surface with frantic fingers. As I tried to regain my composure, a whisper slithered through my thoughts, slicing through the thick dread that surrounded me. "You will never leave," it taunted, each syllable slathering me in hopelessness. Suddenly, the walls quivered, vibrating as though resonating with a heartbeat that did not belong to the living. The gathering of children swayed rhythmically like marionettes controlled by a distant puppeteer. I steadied myself against the grotesque table, the locket's glow brightening, illuminating the faces of those cursed souls surrounding me. "It is feeding time," the monstrous figure uttered, its gaze acidic as it focused upon my trembling body, lips curling into a sinister smile through the darkness. A claw-like hand reached for me, wicked anticipation evident in the child's gaze. Just as I thought I would be overwhelmed, the door shuddered behind me, the corners of the frame splintering where the shadows pressed against it, as if something from the other side longed to enter with no time to spare. I threw myself at the door again, desperate, but the shadows bore down, wrapping around my ankles like thick, sticky tar, pulling me into their void. A cacophony of laughter echoed, rising to a fever pitch, drowning my thoughts, my screams. I was losing myself, losing my grasp on reality, teetering on the edge of an abyss that promised only despair. Then, as a cold hand brushed my skin, a jolt of adrenaline coursed through me. Casting one final glance back at that hellish scene, I hurled my shoulder against the door, willing it to bend to my will. And just as it began to crack open, a piercing wail erupted through the air, shattering time itself. I was frozen, caught in the riptide of despair. The door trembled under my weight, a soft groan escaping its ancient hinges, but my hope was short-lived. The wail reverberated like the tolling of a death knell, resonant and echoing in the hollow chambers of the room, drowning out the eerie laughter. No shadows dared to approach in that moment of sheer terror. Instead, they retreated like a tide pulling away from the shore, leaving me momentarily suspended between the door and the encroaching darkness. "Oh, you hear it?" The grotesque child's voice dripped like honey, sweet and sickening. "That's the sound of something being taken. Something that once belonged." The weight of its words pressed down on me, a stifling blanket woven from threads of anxiety and impending doom. My gaze darted to the shadows, where the swirling blackness pulsed with an aggressive hunger. It surged towards me with a life of its own, slithering over the floor like an insidious fog. Each movement seemed to speak of secrets buried deep within. Twisting my stomach into knots of fear as I renewed my attempt to force the door open, I could feel the tension in the air shift. It was as if the very fabric of this cursed place was holding its breath, waiting for the climax of fear it craved. The door, in its defiance, cracked open just enough for an eager sliver of light to pierce through, illuminating the faces of the children, each abstract visage writhing in anticipation. Each pair of vacant eyes filled with an eagerness that made my heart race. And that brief moment of clarity, I could see its silhouette of a child, a baby, was cradled in the arms of the darkest shadow. Its tiny fingers twitched, trembling without awareness, while its translucent skin glowed faintly against the shroud of darkness. My pulse thundered in my ears as a pang of recognition gripped my heart, a gnawing despair that echoed through my past. I shouted, the words spiraling out like a desperate plea to the universe. "You can't." The answer came, a guttural, echoing laughter that forged itself into the very marrow of my bones. "Once it is taken, it can never be returned," the child in the shadows rasped, its voice cold and hollow. "It belongs to us now." And then, as if orchestrated by some unseen conductor, the other children joined in, their voices melding into a haunting dirge, each note tainted with longing and loss. "Join the feast, join the feast," they sang, and with each repetition, my mind wavered, fighting against the tide of their grief-laden melody. I could see a horizon of despair opening before me, a chasm woven from countless fates intermingled like the strands of a macabre tapestry. The deeper I focused, the more I saw. Remnants of lives laid bare, each thread comprising the stories of those who had wandered into the dark only to be lost forever. The locket around the twisted child's neck pulsed with crimson light, illuminating their grotesque forms and revealing tattoos of loss scrawled all over their shivering bodies, marking the lives they once had. A sickening realization dawned: I was to be part of this tapestry if I didn't escape. With a surge fueled by raw instinct, my heart pounding louder than ever, I threw my entire weight against the door. Behind me, the voices roared in protest, a cacophony of denials and accusations that scraped against my sanity, clawing at my resolve. "You can't. You belong to us." The door cracked wider, revealing a blinding light that cut through the oppressive shadows. Just as I thought it would open, just as I envisioned freedom tasting sweet on my lips, a cold, bony hand grasped my wrist, vice-like and trembling with both strength and desperation. I flung around, the child's face contorted in a rictus of grotesque glee, revealing a gaping maw leaking darkness as their laughter twisted my very essence. "You're not leaving. Not without joining us." I screamed as I felt the shadows close in again, racing towards me like a tidal wave. The cold grip on my wrist transformed into something more sinister, drawing forth the very warmth of my existence. The edges of my reality splintered, warping as the shadows lapped at my heels, and in a shattering moment, the truth crashed upon me with devastating clarity. The shadows were not merely hungry for me. They longed to take my memories, my past, everything that made me who I was. As my vision blurred, my scream tore through the air, a desperate echo of anguish. The darkness surged forward, cradling me in its baleful embrace, and I faltered at the threshold of oblivion, knowing that I was just moments away from being consumed by the void. With every fiber of my being, I lunged toward the light, desperate to hold onto the fragments of my identity. But the shadows were relentless, and as I fell into their grasp, I heard the chilling words whispered through the darkness, "One last memory before you go." Just as the last thread of my hope unraveled, the darkness whispered a secret meant only for me, something I had always feared. That I felt as if I was being pulled between two realities when, suddenly, the voices ceased, and the world around me dissolved into nothingness. Then came a whisper softer than the last, almost intimate: "You were never alive at all." And just like that, everything went dark. The suffocating darkness enveloped me, wrapping itself around my senses like a damp sheet, muting the world beyond. For a heartbeat that stretched endlessly, it was as though time itself had taken a deep breath, holding suspended the void where I once existed. Then, from the depths of this black abyss, reality began to fracture. Like glass cracking under pressure, my limbs felt weightless, floating in an unfamiliar space where echoes whispered and shadows danced. The chilling absence of sound glided over me, and I shivered, the cold seeping into my skin like a poison. It was then that I realized I held onto nothing but the lingering essence of my Baina, mere flicker of a memory. Clung to with a desperation that gnawed at my insides. A sudden rush of wind knocked against me. A spectral breeze laden with the scent of decay. I choked on the tang of every forgotten moment, flooding my mind, unfurling like a grotesque ribbon that tied my past to whatever fate awaited me here. Just as each sensation, frustration, betrayal, joy threatened to spill over into madness, I heard it again, the grotesque laughter. But this time, it came not from the children, but from somewhere deeper within the hollows of my consciousness. Remember us, the voice taunted, as if emerging from the darkest depths of my own soul. Remember what you've lost. And with an insidious pull, I was thrust from the darkness into a sickly illumination. Shadows twisted and coiled about me, reassembling the grotesque figures I'd encountered just moments before. They weren't merely stand-ins for terror. They were pieces of a puzzle I had unknowingly constructed, a fractured reflection of desires and fears screaming to be freed. Before me lay an autopsy table, chilling in its sterile perfection. Beneath the harsh glow of a single light bulb flickering ominously from the ceiling, it bore a figure draped in shadowy cloth, macabre yet unsettlingly familiar. The pulse of fear thrummed in my veins, a warning of the ramifications of approaching. You truly wish to know? The whispers crescendoed, reverberating in my mind with maniacal glee. Will the truth liberate you or doom you? With every step toward the table, each echoing footfall amplified the dread swirling like a tempest in my gut. The grotesque children, now a small army of twisted figures, began to gather around me, their hollow eyes boring into the depths of my being, as if judging my worthiness to uncover whatever lie shrouded my reality. As my hand reached for the edge of the cloth, the air thickened with anticipation. With reluctant resolve, I pulled it back, revealing a tiny, perfect face, devoid of life but awash in an eerie glow, as if the essence of pure sorrow lingered about it like a fragile mist. Its eyes were wide, unblinking, filled with unshed tears that glistened like liquid darkness, pulling me closer, threatening to drown me in despair. "No," I whispered, recoiling as a tidal wave of realization crashed into me. This wasn't just a child, this was the life that had never been, an empty echo of everything I had lost. The one alluded to in shadows, a memory buried so deep it had woven into the fabric of my soul. Why? I gasped, clutching my throat as anguish threatened to consume me. Why was it taken? Because it belonged to us, the voices hissed, coiling into a dark harmony. You were never meant to keep it. We shall feast on what you cannot hold. The weight of their words bore down on me like chains, and I pleaded for understanding they never intended to grant. "No," I shouted, panic surging through my veins like fire. I stumbled backward, my gaze darting between the child under the cloth and the faces of the children that encircled me, hunger radiating from them. And that's when I saw it. Clutched in the little one's small hand lay a small locket, intricately engraved with the same design I once wore, throbbed with a red heartbeat that resonated with understanding and longing. It was no mere accessory. It was the portal to everything I had lost, and it pulsated with a siren's call that made my insides twist in desperation. With a shriek that tore free from my lips, I lunged forward, desperate to reclaim that lost fragment. But the moment my fingers grazed the cool metal, visions flooded my Minda torrent of existence, splintering and scattering like ashes in the wind. Each image tore at my soul, revealing pieces of a life I had no power to change, memories that could never return. The children shrieked, their laughter melding with the sound of my own heartbeat. "Join us," they plead, the cacophony drawing even closer, wreathed in shadows that seemed to take form, pulling toward me as if they were a part of the locket's very essence. As reality around me buckled and warped like fragile glass, pieces tearing away, I realized I was no longer in control. The shadows converged upon me, writhing with a life of their own, gripping my limbs and pulling me into their embrace, their chant now relentless, echoing through the depths of my despair. "Join us, join us!" With one last effort to break free from the clutches of death and madness, I tore my gaze from the child. As everything around me cracked and shattered, the laughter grew loud enough to drown my cries, and the world began to fade into obscurity. And in the very last heartbeat of consciousness, a deep, echoing voice whispered a single final truth: you are forever bound by the life you never knew. Then, the shadows erupted with ferocity, a roaring void swallowing me whole, leaving only the cold, haunting laughter to reverberate in the stillness. The void unraveled, slowly releasing me back into the confines of a familiar darkness. I gasped, my breath harsh against the chill that permeated the air, wrapping itself tightly around me like iron shackles. It felt as though I had broken free from a dream, yet the awakening was no kinder than the nightmare. I was in the same room, but the moment I opened my eyes, I felt the relentless weight of cold reality pinning me down. Something had changed. Something sinister had tainted the air. The autopsy table still loomed before me, now stark and imposing under a dim, flickering fluorescent light. But there was no child, no cloth draped over a lifeless body to unveil. Just the unyielding emptiness of a harsh metallic surface that glistened with an oily sheen, not from the remnants of a past horror, but from something more insidious, a suggestion of darker deeds that had taken place long before I arrived. An uneasy silence paved the way for my mounting dread, the air thick with a foreboding tension that gripped my throat like a vice. Shadows danced just beyond the periphery of my vision, darting in and out of my awareness, whispering secrets only meant for those willing to surrender their sanity to the abyss. I shuddered, half expecting the grotesque children to rise from the floor, their laughter echoing in the corners of my mind like a taunting refrain. Did you think you could leave? A voice slithered through the shadows, cool like fog but edged with malice. I spun around, searching for the source, but found only darkness shifting where light should be. As if satisfying itself, the presence shimmered momentarily before darkening into an amorphous shape that writhed in anticipation. A distorted face emerged, eyes wide, sunken, staring right into my soul with an insatiable hunger that sent shivers coursing through my veins. You belong to us now, it hissed, a chorus of voices folding into one grotesque timbre that made my stomach churn. You must understand the price of existence. You must remember what you have lost and what you can never reclaim. The room contorted, the walls peeling back like the skin of a decaying fruit, revealing glimpses of a past I didn't know I had forgotten. Whispers filled my ears, racing hordes of memories fleeing from a darkness I couldn't comprehend. Images of laughter, joy, and warmth were shattered by specters of loss and grief, twisted and grotesque, like reflections in a funhouse mirror. I could hear the distant echoes of cries that mirrored my own. Railing against the silence, I found myself trapped. It was then that I noticed a door marked with ancient runes that flickered in and out under the same sickly light. Beyond it, a tantalizing warmth beckoned, tempting me to escape the clawing shadows that threatened to claim me. I stumbled toward it, driven by an urgency fueled by desperation and raw fear. The moment my fingers curled around the handle, a chorus of shrill laughter erupted, reverberating through the very marrow of my bones. I hesitated, the handle cold against my palm, the rasping laughter sending icy tendrils through my mind. You will see, the voices promised, malice dripping with every syllable. You will not escape without witnessing the truth. With a surge of determination, I twisted the handle and pushed the door open. The hinges screeched in protest, and what lay before me was not a hallway, but an infinite expanse of swirling mists, colors melting and intertwining like a painter's palette gone awry. It was beautiful, yet terrifying, and as I stepped inside, I felt time lose its tether, the past, present, and future converging into a singular, haunting moment. As I ventured deeper, forms began to materialize amidst the fog, faces I had known and lost, silhouettes caught in a tragic dance, laughter mixing with cries. A symphony of both joy and sorrow battling for dominance in this bizarre realm. I reached out to touch them, longing to reclaim whatever snippets of life had been stolen from me. But the moment my fingers brushed against their ephemeral forms, an unbearable weight pressed down upon me. The laughter shattered like glass, and the faces twisted into anguished masks of terror. They surged forward, their eyes wide, mouths agape in silent screams, imploring me to understand what had transpired. You cannot walk among the lost without paying the price. One figure rasped, its voice barely a whisper yet resonating with a chilling authority. You wanted to remember, but remember what? The life you forsook, or the shadows that cling to your soul? With those words, the fog thickened, swirling and coiling around her, pulling her into its depths, where cries devolved into monstrous howls. I stumbled back, seizing the doorframe, panic pooling within me like poison. The shadows pressed closer, eager to reclaim their prize. Then, in the growing cacophony, unmistakable and clear, I heard a single name. A child's name, Charlotte. A name I had never uttered aloud but had carried like a heavy stone buried deep within me. The walls shuddered upon hearing it, as if the remnants of my regret transformed into a powerful force, threatening to crush everything that stood in its path. And in my chest, a fiery spark ignited a desperate need to save her, to make sense of this nightmare, to fight against the darkness that refused to relent. But as I prepared to step back through the threshold, a shadow lunged at me, its form shifting and twisting, unearthly and profound, that I was confronted with an unrelenting gaze, a void that seethed with hunger, echoing a familiar tune. "You did not think you could leave us, did you?" It whispered, its breath colder than death, and in that moment, with the shadows closing in around me and my heart pounding like war drums, I understood my fate was woven with Charlotte's, and that escape would only lead me deeper into a horror I had yet to comprehend. Just as the shadow plunged toward me, time all but shattered, and the world punctured the veil of my consciousness, a resounding fracture as I screamed a name lost to the void. And then darkness. The darkness engulfed me, a thick, smothering blanket that silenced the turmoil of my thoughts. I drifted, suspended in an abyss that felt endless, without sound or light, a place where time ceased to exist, ruled by an oppressive sense of inevitability. My heart thudded painfully in my chest, each beat echoing against the void like a hammer striking an anvil. Then, without warning, the darkness flickered away, replaced by a cacophony of senses, the sharp stench of decomposition cutting through the haze. I found myself sprawled on a cold, hard floor tiles slick with moisture and grime. The flickering fluorescent lights above sputtered occasionally, illuminating the grim outline of the autopsy room once more. But now it was alive with movement. I scrambled to my feet, gasping as brittle remnants of the past devoured my breath. Tables lined the walls, many stained beyond recognition, shrouded in grotesque shadows that seemed to crawl with a will of their own. The echo of babies' cries penetrated the murk, reverberating against the sterile walls of the room. Each wail was a knife, twisting in my gut, forcing me to confront the unfathomable truth that lurked just beyond my awareness. "Charlotte," I whispered, the name trembling on my lips. Each syllable felt like an invocation, stirring the sinister energies that had cornered me in this waking nightmare. Suddenly, laughter erupted again, this time deafening, mocking. It ricocheted off the walls and wrapped itself around my consciousness, dragging me back into recollections I dared not delve into. I staggered backward, colliding with a table. A glass jar tipped over, spilling its contents, a colorless liquid that splashed against my skin, sending waves of nauseating memories crashing over me. Faces emerged in the glint of the glass. Children, blurred and wretched, distilled flashes of lost moments twisted into unshapely forms of despair. "Do you hear them?" A voice surged from the shadows, smooth and sultry, more tangible than any ghostly whisper before. "The ones you thought you buried? Their screams are a lullaby meant for you, dear." I turned, dread pooling in my stomach, to find a woman standing there. Her features were obscured by tides of specter-like hair that rippled and danced, agitated by forces beyond comprehension. Her eyes glowed an unnatural blue, a compelling beacon amidst the oppressive gloom. "They are here and they are waiting," she said, her voice not rising above a whisper yet cutting through me like a serrated knife. "And so are you." Why are they waiting?" I stammered, panic rising like bile in my throat. "For you to remember, to release them." Her lips curled into a knowing smile, filled with unspeakable promises. "The price of existence demands sacrifices." "Who sacrificed you? Or did you do the sacrificing?" As her words coiled around me, the room trembled with awakened sorrow. Walls resonated with an unseen choir of lost souls wailing for recognition, grief amplifying their cries. I gazed into her eyes and saw a flicker of something I recognized, a reflection of my own despair. I recoiled, feeling the shadows pressing in closer, whispering tales of wretched joys and bitter regrets that had once been my life. They pulled me toward the cold reality waiting just out of sight, a relentless grip wrapping around my wrists. Then a sudden flash erupted through the darkness, blinding and violent. I staggered backward, hands clutching my temples as images danced behind my eyelids. Charlotte's laughter, her small hands in mine, her bright blue dress swirling in the summer breeze. But then the laughter dulled, warped by a heavy silence that filled my chest with an unbearable weight, shadowed by the harsh reality of permanence. And amidst it all, an understanding slowly seeped into my bones. Charlotte was not merely lost, she was claimed, and whatever malevolence lurked here would stop at nothing to draw me deeper into its chasms. Don't turn away. They can be saved. The woman's voice thundered now, cutting through my paralysis. You only have to open the door. I looked to the far wall where a door stood ajar, illuminated by the sickly fluorescence. Beyond it, a deeper darkness awaited, pulsating with a heartbeat that echoed my own. It whispered promises of freedom, but all those desperate voices clambering around me warned, cautioning me against the very thing that beckoned me forward. Before I could act, the room began to shift, the floor tilting underfoot, shadows rippling with sharp intent. Choose! The woman shrieked, and then she lunged toward me, fingers elongated like claws, reaching for my throat. Just as I thought her icy grip would crush me, the door burst wide open, a gale of wind whooshing into the room, tearing apart the veil of reality. Through the tumult, an anguished scream pierced the air, an unmistakable voice, full of terror and recognition. Charlotte. In that harrowing moment, I was torn between the darkness closing in and the beckoning light of the door until the last thing I saw was the woman's glowing eyes, pulsing with a darkness all their own, and everything dove into black, then silence. I was jolted back into awareness, not by a smooth return to the deadened world of the autopsy room, but by a bone-chilling sensation of weightlessness, as if I were suspended in nothingness once again. My breath came in frantic gasps, a crude rhythm that hardly matched the desolation surrounding me. In the silence, the echoes of Charlotte's name replayed like a broken record, haunting and relentless. Gradually, my surroundings crystallized into focus. I was on the precipice of a dark abyss, a vast subterranean chamber that stretched into infinity, its boundaries defined by creeping shadows and the remains of a time long forgotten. Spectral light gushed from fissures in the walls, illuminating grotesque murals of lost souls forever entwined in torment. The air was suffused with a heavy, sickening odor, sweet yet acrid, like decay caught beneath the weight of oblivion. Charlotte, I mumbled, my voice breaking the eerie stillness. The name felt like a tether, drawing me into the heart of the darkness despite the warnings of my instincts. With every fiber of my being screaming against it, I stepped forward, compelled by the mystery that seemed to reach for me like icy fingers. The walls pulsated with something corporeal, some malevolence that rippled beneath the surface. As I approached, the murals began to shift and twist, the mournful faces of children emerging from the layers of blackened paint. I froze, attention caught by the pitiful expressions that paraded before my hollow eyes, pulling me in, pleading for release. I staggered back, but the cries of these children surged within me, a compelling force gnawing at my sanity and dredging up memories I wished to forget. Suddenly, a shriek reverberated through the chamber, morphing into the laughter of children, both euphoric and haunting. I fell to my knees, clutching my ears, trying to silence the symphony of sorrow. The laughter mingled with cries from the past, wrapping around me like a suffocating embrace. Help us! The voices called, a chorus of lament echoing off cavernous walls. They recognized me. How? Perhaps they were echoes of unrealized dreams, each voice woven into the fabric of my own regrets. Struggling to stand and shield myself from the agonizing sounds, I spotted a small, flickering light deep within the chamber. Something alive amidst the sea of despair. Charlotte? My heart thundered, hope igniting a fading ember of resolve. The light pulsed like a heartbeat, growing brighter as I approached. Each step brought me closer to the site of an altar, encrusted with remnants of tattered toys and wilted flowers, a macabre tribute to innocence stripped away. Io felt the unmistakable chill of something sharp, something ancient and predatory, lingering just outside the fringes of my awareness. Then, as I neared the altar, a shadow twisted in my peripheral vision, and dread flooded my veins. I turned to see the woman I had encountered earlier. She stood at the threshold of the shadows, her fatally alluring visage warped, as if she were tearing away from reality itself. Her eyes blazed with an intensity that sent icy tendrils alongside my spine. "Do you see it now?" she purred, stepping closer. "Everything you love can be here if you allow it. Sacrifice is the key, and they are waiting for you to choose." "What do you want from me?" I cried, scrambling back toward the altar. The walls seemed to pulse around me, shadows clamoring with voices that whispered my failures, summoning my deepest fears to drown me. "Charlotte," I shouted, feeling the ground tremble beneath me. "Please, help me find her." A hollow laugh slipped through the woman's lips, reverberating with a malevolence that shook me to my core. "She is here, dear. Waiting and watching," she said, her fingers stretching like icy vines as the shadows began to swirl, drawing closer. "Stop." I frantically waved my arms, willing the darkness back. "What do you want me to do?" In response, the shadows surged and unfurled around me, images seeping into the air, fragments of shattered possibilities igniting the chamber like flames to kindling. Here was, my sorrow reflected, the small grave marked with Charlotte's name, the hollow laughter of her friends turning to screams, the nightmarish choices that led me to this wretched place. As the shadows converged, the voices crescendoed, a cacophony laced with dread. The altar shimmered, a luminous figure emerging from the heart of the darkness, a girl, no older than 6, with bright blue eyes and a ghostly smile. Tears streamed down my face as I recognized her. "Charlotte?" But before I could grasp her ethereal hand, the woman lunged forward, eyes ablaze with dark hunger. "Choose now," she shrieked, her claws extended as she erupted from the shadows, ready to ensnare me in a nightmare from which there would be no awakening. With my heart hammering in my chest, I gripped the altar tighter, choosing between the light of my daughter and the harsh breath of despair reaching for me from the suffocating shadows, knowing only that one decision would seal our fates. "Choose," she howled again, and then everything went black once more, a darkness swallowing all possibility, an abyss alive with what might be. The silence returned, but the heartbeat of every lost soul pulsed through the darkness, echoing the desperate question in my mind as the shadow of despair loomed closer. What would be the price of my choice? And could I bear to pay it? With a violent jolt, I was yanked back into vision, the darkness dispersing like smoke, replaced by the faint, flickering light of torches lining a narrow, wet corridor. The walls oozed an unsettling mix of moisture and something darker, a stark reminder that I was still within the depths of that forsaken place. I could still feel the echo of the woman's presence, the chill of her words circling my mind like a vulture waiting for carrion. My fingers grazed the cool stone, each touch setting my nerves alive with an electric horror. "Charlotte?" I whispered, as if the sound of her name might bring her spirit closer, might part the veil between our worlds. The corridor twisted and turned like a serpent, each bend soaked in a sinister ambience that pressed grievously against my chest. The oppressive weight intensified with every step, a malignant fog wrapping itself around me, turning my breath shallow and my thoughts desperate. It lingered, pushing against me as I glanced back, half expecting to see the warped figure of the woman creeping behind, ever watchful. Instead, there was only the oppressive emptiness that filled the air, suffocating and oppressive. Then I heard Ida's faint, rhythmic whispering, weaving in and out of the silence like a serpent's hiss. It clawed at my mind, drawing me further down the corridor. "Help us find her." The voices melded seamlessly with the murmurings of the shadows, merging cries of torment and whispers of hope. Steeling myself, I pressed on, each footfall echoing in the stillness, submerging me deeper into a realm where anguish danced with despair under flickering torchlight. I stumbled upon an archway, the entrance adorned with symbols smeared in dark, rivulets of dried blood, a warning, perhaps, or an invitation. Anxiety coursed through me, yet the need to find Charlotte propelled me forward. Beyond the archway, a circular chamber loomed, a sanctuary of nightmares. The air was fraught with tension, thick and charged, vibrating with unseen forces. In the center, an altar dominated the room, that same grotesque assemblage of forgotten toys and wilted flowers now transforming into a horrific tapestry of forgotten souls, their distorted faces writhing in a silent scream. At the periphery, more shadowy figures stirred, half-formed shapes twisting in and out of the confines of reality. They reached out with elongated fingers, desperate for release, for clarity. Charlotte, their murmur turned to a chorus, each voice rooting itself in the depths of my terror, burying itself deeper into my heart. I could feel their sorrow, the weight of a million unfulfilled dreams pulling me towards the altar. Charlotte, I cried out, heart pounding furiously, as the visions danced before me. The chamber pulsed with life, shadows becoming heavier, wrapping around me like a serpent ready to strike. Images cascaded forth, the memories of laughter, the joyful spark of a child's delight placed beside the heartbreak of separation, a ceaseless torrent of emotion that weighed heavily on my spirit. But when my gaze fell back on the altar, it had changed. There, on the teetering edge of reality, a small figure flickered, a sweet spectral visage with blue eyes like the sky before a storm. "Mommy," she whispered, the voice lilting with innocence and dread combined, both thrilling and bone-chilling. I reached out, trembling, wanting to bridge the unfathomable distance, to hold her again and wrap her in the love I had lost, Charlotte. But as I lunged forward, the shadows surged around me, laughter bubbling up from the depths of despair, a cacophony of voracious hunger mixed with the sweetness of innocence. The familiar woman's voice cut through the chaos. "You want her? Then give yourself," she shrieked, cloaking the room in a whirlwind of despair, shadows pressing closer until they felt like icy fingers against my flesh. I gasped, fighting against the pull. "I want, not again." But my protest was drowned in the roar of sorrow as figures began to take shape, compiling morphed images of tragedy, the graves of lost children scattered throughout my memories, the curse of carrying their stories without resolution. Their cries begged for more than acknowledgement. They insisted upon sacrifice, echoing the sinister invitation from which I recoiled. "And yet here you are," the woman laughed, a sound devoid of warmth, twisting it into something unrecognizable. "You bring new life into this world to seal the fate of another. Choose your sacrifice wisely, for the shadows will always claim what you refuse to give." The air grew heavy with her words, pulling taut against the fabric of reality. The chamber darkened, the walls closing in as I felt the ice slither through my veins, an overwhelming dread surging within me. I heard Charlotte's voice, soft yet haunting, a tether begging me to decide. Suddenly, the shadows began to tighten their grip around me, the figures writhing in agony, their pleas loud and desperate. "She needs you. They all need you." The walls of reality twisted violently, distorting, threatening to consume me whole. Just as I felt the last vestiges of my strength fading, the altar erupted with blinding light, and in it appeared a door, etched with something both familiar and foreign. "Choose." The figure of the woman was there again, right in front of me, a maw of darkness beckoning behind her. As the light pulsated, I stood at a precipice. I could step toward salvation of my child or surrender to the shadows that had kept me ensnared. The choice lingered over me, heavy with grim anticipation, like a noose tightening around my neck. And in that moment of dread, the tangible silence shifted as I heard a child's giggle, familiar, resonant, yet eerily hollow. "Mommy," the sound wrapped around my heart. Yet when I turned, nothing could prepare me for the face staring back at me from the door, a reflection, both of Charlotte and of pure malevolence. There, in the flames of that radiant light, a molten grin spread across her face, an expression of mocking joy. "Choose if you dare." And then I realized the door was slamming shut behind me, the blinding light flickering into shadow, leaving me alone again, with only the sinister specters and my ever-looming fate. I stumbled backward, my heart racing as the last vestiges of light slipped away, plunging me into an abyss pulsating with darkness. The air felt alive, thick with an unseen malevolence pressing against my skin, and the laughter of the shadows echoed in my mind, taunting, deriding. I could barely see, but I sensed the outlines of the room shifting, the walls transforming into grotesque caricatures of those I loved. The figures writhed, their faces inching toward mine, mouths gaping wide in silent screams, begging for salvation that would never arrive. Panic surged through me, visceral and electric, sending me into a breathless frenzy. "Charlotte!" I screamed, desperation clawing at my throat. Yet my voice felt useless amidst the cacophony of wailing shadows. Each syllable faded into the dark, swallowed by the insatiable despair surrounding me, a reminder that I was as lost as the spirits clamoring for release. The darkness cocooned me tighter, a living entity that pulsed and breathed, until I felt its icy fingers clutch my heart. I realized I was not alone. The shadows stirred no longer just mere phantoms but disjointed forms driven by a hunger for my fear. They surged closer, black eyes filled with despair, lips flaring to reveal anguished smiles that might have once belonged to the innocent. My stomach twisted at the thought. Help us, find her," they chorused, thin voices layered with collective sorrow, drowning me in their cries. I could feel their need, the raw pulse of their regrets intertwining with my own. They weren't lost children. They were echoing my guilt, my failures, and intertwined with them was Charlotte's whisper shimmering like hope yet tinged with dread. I turned, aimlessly searching for an escape. The circular chamber, once terrifying, felt oddly familiar, as though I had walked here in a dream before. And then I saw a narrow passageway to the right, my only chance, with desperation fueling my steps. I dashed toward it, threading through the shadows that reached for me, their grasp damp and cold against my skin. I could hear their rasping breaths, the way they hungered for the warmth of my blood. My pulse quickened, propelling me forward, pressing me to reach the flickering outline of the exit. That I burst into the passage, only to be met by a thick fog that enveloped me like a shroud, damp and rancid. My lungs fought against it, but I pressed through, praying for salvation. The walls began to pulse like a heartbeat, and visions of long-forgotten faces swirled around me, overlapping one another in a ghostly dance. Suddenly, a child's laughter erupted close by, a sound so sweet, so innocent, yet dripping with malice. I stopped, fear clamping around my throat. "Charlotte?" I whispered, half expecting her to materialize before me, arms outstretched, eyes bright with joy. Instead, a shadowy figure formed from the mist, a girl about her age, but her eyes held a depth of sorrow that sent a visceral chill racing down my spine. She flickered in an intermittent dance between dream and nightmare. "Why did you leave us?" she asked, her voice soft yet excited, laced with an undertone of accusation. My heart seized painfully. I didn't what? The smile that cut across her face was disarming, maddening in its innocence. "You chose to come here. You want to find her, don't you? You want to find her at any cost." Her voice spiraled into a crescendo, mingling with the whispers of the others, a symphony of despair that surged around me, filling every crevice of my mind. My pulse thundered as I wrestled with the guilt blossoming inside, blooming like dark flowers suffocating in the silence. "Oh, please," I gasped, stepping back, seeking an escape. "I came for her. I would never." "You would." The girl's eyes sparked with an unsettling clarity, the kind that froze hope in its tracks. Shadows wrapped around her, and she became part of the darkness, a wretched silhouette swallowed by terror. "You have told." That moment, the floor underfoot trembled, a deep rumbling emanating from the very heart of the chamber. The solid ground cracked open, plunging into an abyss of darkness that threatened to swallow me whole. I could feel the shift, the overwhelming sense of doom slithering up my legs, binding me in a hopeless embrace. And then, from the depths, I heard Ida's heart-wrenching wail that pierced through the fray like a needle, a voice that unmistakably belonged to Charlotte. "Mommy," it echoed around, a call that reverberated within my soul. The realization hit like a tidal wave, drowning me in despair. She was down there. I had to save her. The darkness swirled more violently, the cries morphing into a chaotic symphony of wails surrounding me. I staggered backward, my breath quickening as realization dawned. Hideous, sickening truth chilling my core. Here, in this place, I wasn't the seeker. I was the hunted, with terror rooting me to the spot. I felt the swirling shadows rush in, encircling my body, and as they reached for me, I understood the grotesque choices laid before me. Just as the darkness enveloped my vision, a blinding light erupted from where the floor had cracked open, cascading with malignant flames. With it came the last whisper of Charlotte's name, a desperate plea stained with fear. There, I stood poised on the brink of annihilation, your heart racing toward an unfathomable choice, both desperate yet undesirable. But within the choking darkness closing in, I felt a sudden sharp pain as a grip latched onto my ankle. Call to her, it hissed, pulling tighter, and in that moment, everything clicked into place. The abyss was not just beneath me. It was me, demanding a sacrificial choice. The weight of their expectations bore down, forcing my voice to falter, and then the girl's laughter returned, echoing through the nightmarish domain. It's time to choose, but can you bear the truth? And as the shadows screamed in agony, the boundaries of reality fractured like glass, crashing down around me, leaving only one question lingering in the suffocating dark: who would I have to sacrifice to save the one I loved? The heaviness of despair felt like an iron shackle around my soul, each breath an agonizing reminder of the life I fought to reclaim. The swirling darkness tightened its grip, a storm of anguished cries enveloping me. With trepidation clinging to every thought, I stared into the abyss, Charlotte's name clawing at my throat like a mantra, begging for release. The shadows pulsed with life around me, each whisper a dull throb that echoed the very heartbeat of this darkened place. Call for her. The voice echoed, more urgent now, a twisted plea that wrapped around my mind. The laughter of the faceless spirits became unbearable, churning in my gut. I felt their hunger surge through the air, urging me to make my choice. Charlotte, I shouted, desperation clawing its way from my very core. I'm here. I'm coming. Just hold on. The response came immediately, a cacophony of wails amplified as if a dam had broken, drowning me in sorrow. Help us, save us, they chanted, words that dripped with loss and regret. The shadows contorted, sharpening into nightmarish shapes, grotesque figures reaching for me with skeletal hands, like marionettes lost in the throes of despair. The horror of their reality seeped into my own consciousness, a collective grief that locked me in its unforgiving embrace. Choose or be chosen. The woman's voice roared above the storm, tinged with wicked delight. In that instant, I knew that this moment wasn't just a choice between two lives. It was a reckoning with the sins of my past. Charlotte, I breathed again, the fear permeating my thoughts like a noxious gas. Please, I will do anything. The last shreds of my sanity wrestled against the honesty of my words. It echoed in the darkness, merging with the cries of the lost, with every heartbeat thundering in my chest. I stumbled toward the altar, seeking the soft glow that radiated like a beacon in the suffocating blackness. It pulsed with a warmth that seemed to respond to my longing, a light that promised hope but also whispered of the price. The shadows recoiled momentarily, tentatively shifting backward as if sensing my resolve. Sacrifice one to save another, the voices hissed as the altar glimmered beneath their twisted influence. The air thickened with tension, sending a shiver down my spine. Your daughter or the rest, choose. No, I protested, the word ripping from my throat with newfound ferocity. My heart fractured at the thought, the essence of what it meant to choose one life over countless others resonating like a death knell. But just as I dared to step toward the ethereal light emanating from the altar, images shifted before me, snippets of another life. Charlotte laughing the way her tiny hand fit perfectly in mine, her sweet giggles blossoming like flowers in a spring garden, illuminating the darkest corners of my heart. And yet, alongside those memories swirled darker images, faces of the lost, children with hollow eyes, twisted smiles pleading for a savior. In that moment, the gravity of my choices spiraled for an insatiable hunger that pinched at my senses, drawing me toward the ultimate sacrifice. Choose this cursed echo of existence, or choose to release those that yearn to be free. The words were a caustic whisper that sliced through my defenses. If I chose Charlotte, I would be guilty of abandoning those innocent souls to wander these wretched halls forever lost between realms of torment. The shadows recounted tales of my past, the moments I overlooked, the choices wanting resolution. I gasped at the realization that I hadn't just lost Charlotte. I had lost countless possibilities by allowing the shadows to claim the fragments of my heart. Charlotte! I screamed, tears streaming down my face as the passageway behind me began to seal, cutting off my escape. I will not choose. But the swirling dark pressed closer, poised to swallow me whole, leaving me rooted between two realities as I readied myself to scream. Enough! I felt a sharp pang of anguish, potent and raw, from the very depths of my being. It shattered around me like glass, refracting beams of painful truth. I saw it. Clearly then, the true horror that lay before me. Perhaps it was never about choosing. The shadows coalesced, whispering malevolently. Perhaps it was only about understanding what it means to sacrifice your own peace for another. Suddenly, a screeching howl erupted, resonating from the cracks within the walls. A monstrous wave of despair surged forward, threatening to pull me under. Behind the altar, just beyond the veil of light, stood a figure wrapped in shadows. I staggered back, breaths quickening as recognition clawed at my memory. There, within the darkness, I saw the flickering remnants of my past, the faces I had forgotten, lost lives begging to be acknowledged, their anguish entwining with my own. Each face bore the telltale signs of a burden I once carried, a child, a mother, a family shattered by my choices. I couldn't deny it any longer. It wasn't just Charlotte's fate woven into this tapestry. Your sacrifice is not merely for her. The voice shifted into something familiar, yet sinister. It extends beyond one child. It encompasses the fate of all. Choose, the shadows shrieked, taunting. Charlotte, I cried, desperation clawing at my throat, fighting against the rising tide of mounting anguish. I won't let you go. I lunged toward the pulsing light as the darkness swirled around, pummeling me with voices thick with despair. Help us. Save us. They chorused, voices muffled, echoes of countless souls with stories yet told. I felt the weight of responsibility press heavily against my chest. In that moment, clarity pierced through the chaos. The price of existence pressed heavy, and the weight of love surged through me. I would sacrifice my own essence if it meant saving Charlotte and all the others. Fine, I yelled, bracing against the waves of despair threatening to drag me under. If you'll take me, if it will save them, I accept. With the very words spilling from my lips, the chamber imploded with deafening noise, shadows swirling violently around me as tendrils of darkness began to invade my mind, clawing desperately at my memories, each fragment unwinding invisible threads that had once tethered me to my fate. And then came the silence, an engulfing stillness. Welcome back, the voices thundered, resonant and exhilarating. In the oppressive dark, the altar shone brightly, radiating warmth that curled around me, binding my weary soul. But in the chilling wake of those words, a sickening realization hit like ice water in my veins. I was free, yet not unharmed. Something vital had been lost, a piece of my essence entwined with those shadowy shapes forever. Not all can escape, the pulse of the darkness whispered, even as I fought to regain my bearings. You have become one of us. Shadows danced at the very edges of my vision, and I turned, tremors of disbelief coursing down my spine. My connection to Charlotte was gone, severed like an umbilical cord cast adrift in nightmares. I'm still here, I murmured, still pushing against the oppressive wall of shadows. I'd given them everything, yet they took my daughter from me. Not everything, dear, the sinister laughter echoed. Not yet. The room darkened, flickering in and out like the last beats of my fading heartbeat, until all that remained was the sharp understanding of loss and the silence that followed. I knew the truth. Charlotte existed now beyond the veil, set free by my choice. Yet the tether from my own soul would forever bind me to the darkness, whispering secrets I could never escape. Remember, the shadows whispered, chilling and malicious as they enveloped me. You are always with us. And as I sank deeper into the darkness, the last flicker of hope extinguished, leaving only one chilling thought to linger on the precipice of my mind. the horror was far from over. Life would continue to haunt me. Charlotte was free, but I was forever tethered, caught between worlds, a vessel of their unspeakable desires. Don't let me go, I echoed into the void, knowing that the shadows would never truly let me rest. The darkness welcomed me home, and as I succumbed to it, I realized I was never alone. And just like that, reality twisted, reshaping into a horrifying reflection, the shadows guilty of a crime I could never reconcile. The final remnants of my soul echoed a chilling truth: you will always belong to the dark.